The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. The remote meeting starts with item number 1 tonight, which is actually roll call.
Miller?
Here.
Rosado?
Here.
Beck? Here. Nah?
Here.
Kansas?
Here.
Barron?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
O'Brien? Callahan?
Here.
Meitzler?
Here.
Malay? Ewer?
Here.
Theron?
Here.
McFadden?
Here. Okay, we have the necessary quorum to conduct business tonight. As a reminder to speak directly into your microphone and make sure that you mute when you're not talking. All right, next up will be item number 3, which is approve the minutes for October 12th, 2020 and October 13th, 2020. Do you have any comments or corrections on any of them? If not, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ewer, second by Knopp. Roll call, please.
Okay, shh. Sorry, my 3-year-old's in here now.
Mama.
Okay, hold on. Ewer?
Aye.
Cerrone?
Aye.
McFadden?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Rosado?
Aye.
Beck?
Aye.
Nah?
Aye.
Kansas?
Aye.
Barron?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
O'Brien? Callahan?
Aye.
Meitzler?
Aye.
And Malay? Motion carried, 12-0.
Okay. Next up would be items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything tonight, Laura?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Next up would be the consent agenda. Alderman Chanzit.
Your Honor, the consent agenda reads as follows. Ordinance 20-63, declaring property to be surplus and authorizing sale thereof. Resolution 20-120-R, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Batavia and the County of Kane for household hazardous waste collection services, and a rider to offer to contract with U.S. Ecology. And Resolution 20-121-R, authorization to execute a contract for the 2020-2021 snow and ice removal services with Shamrock Hardshapes and Restoration, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $70,000. I would move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion by Chanzit, second by Knopp. Roll call, please.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, Callahan,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye, I've been here. Aye on the previous vote too.
okay. And that was an A for the previous vote, I assume?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. I'll mark that down.
thanks.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Misato,
Aye.
Beck. Aye. And Knopp.
Aye.
We have 13-0. Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next up will be item number 7, which is resolution 20-123-R, approving a resolution to apply for the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, Itep funding for Batavia Avenue, Route 31, road diet conversion from Fabian Parkway to Millview Drive. Okay. Just a little bit of background. This goes back to 2018 when we adopted the strategic plan, which includes identifying and enhancing safe walking, biking routes through downtown. Based on that initiative, the council desired to implement a road diet on 31 or Batavia Avenue, and we have directed staff to apply for Itep funding, and this is the next step. Do we have any comments or questions on this?
Alan, I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
In order for this to happen, I realize this is the first step and we've got to get the studies done, but would this be funded, would the actual work done be funded through IDOT, or would the city be responsible for the funds to complete this work? The reason I ask that, are we on IDOT's radar for this work to be done? And if we're not, are we premature in doing anything with any of the road studies or the traffic studies that may become outdated by the time IDOT's ready to do this work?
This is Rahat. I can take that question, Alderman. So that exactly what you said, that is our goal with this funding. Gary and I and Laura, we kind of talked about this strategy because we didn't know whether IDOT will be on board with our concept of road diet. So we thought, why not apply for this ITEP funding and see or take the temperature from IDOT, see whether they like this proposal, and if they decides to fund this proposal, then they will be paying for the preliminary engineering, design engineering, construction engineering, and all the way to the construction. They will pay up to 90%, but at least 80% of the cost from the beginning to the end. So this is our way to take a little bit of temperature from IDOT to see whether they are going to be open to this idea of road diet. Now, having said that, if we are not successful in getting the funding, then we can still go forward. IDOT indicated to us that we can hire our own engineer and do preliminary engineering, which will include doing traffic study and all that, and present the findings to them. And at that point, they will be open for a discussion with us whether a road diet is something that they will move forward with.
Perfect, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I guess I'll just say, I feel like this is something that we need to explore every avenue we can for any of the funding that we can get from outside the city for any of the projects that we're doing, especially infrastructure of this size and scope. And I really think that this is something that hopefully, what we've experienced when we've been downstate in the past, and talking to IDOT, this is something that they are interested in. And I think that's something that, we've seen how it's worked just to the north of us up in Geneva. And I really hope that we can, procure some funding for this and get going on it.
I have one
And
question.
I also want to thank Alderman Beck for getting me the letters. I did receive the package. I haven't really opened it to look at it. It came to my desk towards the end of the day today. So thank you for getting those letters to me.
No problem. I had heard, and I think it was either you, Rahat, or Laura had said that North Aurora was looking into the road diet as well. Have we heard any updates on that, whether or not they're moving forward with anything? Or did
I'm not aware of it. So maybe you heard it from Laura, I'm guessing.
I'm not sure, but I'd be happy to check with Steve Bosca, their city administrator, to see what the status is on that and report back.
Okay. I don't remember where I heard it. Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 20-123-R, approving a resolution to apply for Itep funding for Batavia Avenue Road Diet conversion from Fabian Parkway to Millview Drive.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Beck. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, Callahan,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Shanzit,
Aye.
and Barron.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you. Next up will be item number 8, resolution 20-124-R, approving a resolution to apply for Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, Itep funding for Fox River Bike Path construction. And this is something that we've discussed in the past for the pathway to the south. And we didn't have funding available for it. This is the riverfront project for the path along the wastewater treatment plant, to provide a more, I won't say direct route, but a more singular route used by just the bike path. And the Illinois Department of Transportation is currently accepting the funding applications for this as well. So this is just like the last one. We need to get this in and see if we can get this funded. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
I remember talking about this, a few years ago when we were first walking out, before we started construction on the water plant, and I remember hearing a figure of $5 million plus to do something like this. And I'm torn right now because we're about to start a project to look at the whole riverfront, and this is a great idea. But I also look at the budget that we're going to talk about soon, and we have a bike path already. It may not be ideal, but it's not like we don't have connectivity there. And I can have a hard time supporting going after funding and then kind of being committed into a project and being like, okay, well, now we have to come up with the money, where I just don't see it as a plausible thing right now. And I'm conflicted because I like the idea of changing that, but like I said, it's not like we don't have something there right now. And I'd hate to put us in a position that we're going to go spend money that we don't have. Whereas the road diet is a way to connect the city better than it is right now. I don't know that this adds that much value until we know more about the waterfront plan.
Yeah, as I read through this before the meeting, Mark, I thought to myself about, we're going to need probably a similar type project and funding for it when we get around to whatever we do when the dam comes out and try to encase the pond. So we may need to have that as another one. But I also feel like even if this just plays for the plan to get that done, and then we have to wait till we can figure out how to fund the rest of it, at least we have the plan together. And I also feel like we talked about this during even just the walk around we did down there at the wastewater treatment plant, that a lot of this also ties into riverfront and riverbank stabilization along there, because a lot of this project, by moving it out there, has a dual purpose. So I feel like I don't want to ignore that, because if we kick this one can down the road, we may end up having to go in and do emergency repairs down there to the riverbank that may end up costing us more money and provide us less opportunity if we wait. That's my only fear with that.
This is for a bike path. This is not for riverbank stabilization. I don't know how the two, although the bike path would be along the river, I don't know that we get riverbank stabilization funds out of a bike path.
I think to have the area to create enough area to be able to have the path out there, you have to do some riverfront work or riverbank work to be able to support the path.
Yeah, there's not enough room, this is Miller, along the riverfront to do a bike
No, I understand
path.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. So we're going to spend a ton of money extending the bike path, just moving it 100 yards to the west and stabilizing the riverbank. I'm more interested in the riverfront. And like I said, I love the idea. And I wanted to do it when we first did that walkthrough. I just don't. I'm looking at all the things we need to fund, and this is a wish list. This is second bridge wish list kind of stuff going, in my opinion. And I'm not comfortable with it right now.
Okay.
Alan.
Yeah, this is sorry, Alan. This is
Go ahead,
Elliot.
Marty.
It's going to cost a lot of the other costs.
Whoever that is, you're breaking up very bad.
Yeah. Marty, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say I take a slightly different tact as it comes to these resolutions. We're applying for looking for outside funding. The way that I view these type of resolutions where we're looking for the outside funding is we're seeing if there's opportunities for other parties to contribute to some of our projects. If it turns out that we get denied for these things, no money, then it's no gain, no loss. At the same time, if we get the money, then it puts the kind of the impetus on, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to be able to, we have this money that will offset it. Does that set the type of plan that we actually want? If we don't get the money, then the plan for a riverbank stabilization looks a lot different. If you do get it, then I would say it gives you have better choices to make as to what you can do, because now you have additional monies. And I think you by applying for these things, you can make a more informed decision as to how to fund projects instead of not applying for it right now, never knowing if you're going to get it, and try to fund the thing entirely 3 years from now with this as a missed opportunity. We've got a lot of, the dam vote as a prior is a missed opportunity, and now we're kind of paying for it. So these, I say, apply for it, see what we get, roll the dice.
What's our
Alan,
commitment
this is Elliot.
though, if it is accepted?
Okay, Elliot, you're next.
Yeah, so I'm kind of right between, I think, where Mark and Marty are. I agree 100% that, if there's a chance to get outside funds, we should explore that chance. I agree that, having the bike path stay along the riverfront would be ideal for the long-term 50-year view of what we would want to have along the river. But I have to concur with Mark that for the foreseeable future with what we're about to dip into later this evening, even just what we've been facing for the last, since February, March-ish, I don't see how, in good conscience, I could commit, funds locally to do that kind of an extravagant build out. That's a nice to have. That's a want. That's not a need. So that's where I kind of see the two together.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments?
Alan, Dan?
Go ahead, Dan.
I would definitely piggyback on that when I think about the water in the basements of the homes in my ward. And if I had to choose between a pipe and getting those homes and triage all these different choices, I have to agree. But I do recognize Marty's point. If we don't roll the dice, we don't know if we're going to get any funding. But it came right down to it. Even if we did get the funding, I'm not completely clear that we could move forward with it. I don't feel comfortable.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I jump in and just ask a question? Are we committing to this? So if the funding comes in, do we sit down at that point and analyze the amount of funding versus the cost and see if it's worth it then? Or are we committed to it no matter what the cost is?
Alan, this is Gary. I can jump
Gary.
in. We're not committing to the project. We are committing to making an application. And at the point we would be officially awarded the funds, at that point in time, we would have to make the decision whether we're going to go forward or not. My understanding is there's a long line of people waiting for funds. So if we pass by these funds, they're going to go to good use someplace else. It's not like they're going to go to waste, but we're not obligating ourselves to the project. We're only obligating ourselves to an application to funding.
Alan, can I ask Gary a question?
Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I fully agree with everybody on the section of is it a want versus a need. And I think my point about making the informed decision is if the construction of a bike path is a byproduct of a plan that can be funded through this that stabilizes the riverbank primarily, then that makes a little bit of a difference. And if there's more money involved for that you can kill two birds with one stone, stabilize the bank and put that on top, that's a lot different than just saying we want to put in a bike path. If it's just to put in a bike path, forget it. I think what I would want to know is what else, how can we best utilize this money overall? So I think I'm like with Mark and Elliot and Dan, but I don't see the harm in applying.
So it is true that portions of this trail would involve structural improvements that would stabilize the bank. Other portions of the trail would just be constructed, on the ground surface and would be a little bit away from the edge of the bank. So it's kind of half and half there. And Alder Wolf is correct in his assessment that at some point in time, council had talked about using Itep funds for potentially the Depot Pond area. And I'm not an expert in the Itep funding, but I just, the back of my head tells me that we're going to get a big project. They're probably not going to give us two big projects. So, you kind of prioritize.
Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
I just wanted to, bring to light another factor about this, that it isn't merely an aesthetic project. The path that cuts on the west side of the wastewater treatment plant is fairly dangerous. There are a lot of blind spots through there where there are the potential for collisions between bicyclists and pedestrians. And then also it is right at the front door of the food pantry and clothes closet. So there is also a practical and safety reason to want to move that. But agree with all of the comments that have been made that there's a need to prioritize projects. This was just identified as, something that there seemed to be a keen interest in following our visit to the wastewater treatment plant.
And one more question. I don't know if this can be answered by anybody that's here or not, but if we apply for funding and then we get the funding, then we say, nah, never mind. How bad does that look on us later? Does that start to push us down the list of places that they're going to provide funding because we turned down funding? We're creating work and then saying, no, thanks for doing all your work. We're not going to take it. It doesn't come across to me as a good gesture.
Rahat maybe can comment also on this, but I think if we made a habit of that, then that would certainly start to shed bad light onto us. But projects get awarded and then they go away from cities on a fairly regular basis. So, and in fact, in this case, we're not even going to take it to we wouldn't take it to the level of committing. So again, we're just in the application stage.
And I'll make a comment that, and I didn't add that to the resolution, but if you go back in 2017, we developed 3 different concepts for this bike alignment. The catalog version was east side of the treatment plant, which was about $5 million. But there were 2 other concepts that we worked with, and they were cost estimated wise back then was 1 million and 3 million. So we have 3 different concepts that we worked with, 1 million, 3 million, and 5 million. So let's say we do get the funding, and we all hope that happens. Then in that case, depending on where you want to go with the river bank stabilization, you can choose to do the cheapest concept, which is $1 million, but it's going to be an improvement on some of the blind spot that Laura talked about. We can realign that bike path a little bit on the west side of the treatment plant so that it's much safer than what it is today. So in that case, if we get 80%, we are committing ourselves to only $200,000 rather than a $3 million price tag. So I kind of agree with what the council is saying, but at the same time, I think we should apply for the funding. If we get it, then we can pick and choose which concept we want to go with, depending on what council wants to do at that point.
Alan?
Abby, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Gary, you had said that if you thought that the state wouldn't consider 2 major projects, you're talking about the depot pond and this bike path, but we're applying for the same grant for the road diet. So are they going to consider both the road diet and the bike path?
You're asking me to kind of jump inside their heads. Typically, my experience is that they like to distribute grants to many different communities and not let just one community get a lot of the money. That's just my past experience.
But it's not unusual for a community to apply for multiple projects in the same round of the grant application process.
Yeah, exactly. And you may apply for 4 or 5 grants, but only get one of them.
Right.
Is there any way as we apply for these grants for us to show a priority to Itep as what we're looking for as our priority? Because I think if that's true, I think, my priority would be the road diet would be the number 1 priority.
I think you do that by submitting applications or not submitting applications.
Okay.
And I think the fact that the application, thanks to Alderman Beck, will be submitted with letters of recommendation from businesses and residents and the Bike Commission, it really shows a tremendous amount of community support for the project, may tend to show favor upon that particular project.
But what's ironic is that I'm pretty sure I also wrote a letter of support for the bike path project 2 years ago when you applied the last time. So you can do if you want for this one. It obviously didn't work last time, but yeah, my priority would be the road dieting.
And who knows who will be applying for the grant for the depot pond, since we don't own that.
Right.
We're working in collaboration with our park district, but perhaps they might be the ones who would apply for the grant.
I mean, the chance of getting the bike path funded is pretty low. Why I say that is from attending few of the webinars for Itep funding, what I understood is that they would like to fund something new rather than something existing. So in this case, we have a bike path which is somewhat functional, but we would like to enhance the functionality of that bike path. So I think ranking wise and from the cost perspective wise, it may not rank that high, but you never know. We might get lucky also. So we are rolling a dice and taking a chance. So it's again, we might be saying it's a $200,000 project for us where we can invest only $200,000 and get $800 from the state and get a much safer, much nicer bike path along the west side of the treatment plant.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I agree, Alderman Wolf. I think we should move ahead with the application. I don't see how it could hurt. And it, like Alderman Callahan said, it gives us some more choices to make better decisions. So I don't see how it could hurt us. And if we don't use it, I don't think that that'll have any bearing on us for any future grants.
Okay, I will make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 20-124-R, approving resolution to apply for Itep funding for the Fox River Bike Path construction.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Rosado. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, Callahan,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
No.
Zerone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Hansit,
Aye.
and Barron.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-1.
All right, thank you. All right, up next is item number 9, a discussion on fire department donating old self-contained breathing apparatus. And I don't know who we have here tonight to discuss this with us. Is Chief here tonight? Randy, are you here?
I am here.
Okay. I think this is a great idea to be able to donate that stuff to, people that are in vocational training. Having gone through vocational training out at way back in the 80s, a lot of the things that were donated to us were really, really useful. And I think this could be one of those things.
Yeah, we got new air packs earlier this year on a FEMA grant that I got, and the old air packs they've got very little value. They're 2 cycles out of NFPA cycle, and they only have a year left on the bottles on there before they have to be literally thrown out. And I think the career centers could make use of it for at least a year before they would either have to make a decision on whether or not to buy new bottles or to not use them anymore. The grant, the SCBA's that the old ones that I want to give them, we actually got those on another grant back in 2006 that I got for the department. So we really never even bought the air packs that we're looking to give away, so.
Have you had discussions with the Career Center? And
Yes,
Tech
both
Center?
the Fox Valley Career Center would love to have them, and also the Technology Center of DuPage, which I have a former firefighter that teaches over there, and they would love to have some of them also.
I think it's a great way to, promote training, and without them having to spend the money on the equipment. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, do we need a motion on this, or can we just? I guess we should have.
So moved, Meitzler.
What?
I said so moved, Meitzler.
Second, Knopp.
Okay, moved by Meitzler, second by Knopp. All those in favor of the fire department donating the old self-contained breathing apparatus?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Actually, I'm sorry, we have to do a roll call in this. So roll call.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosato,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Hansit,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, and Callahan.
Aye.
Motion carried, 13-0.
All right, thank you. Up next will be item number 10. Would be the motion to approve bid and sale of parcels north and west of 917 North Van Buren. Alderman Chanzit.
Thank you. So this is a continuation from last month. We did authorize the sale. We did get a bid. It does meet the requirement of being at least 80% of the appraised value. And so this is again for the property adjacent to 917 North Van Buren Street, city-owned property. As a reminder, we do need a 2/3 vote to approve this. This has received unanimous approval at all the other previous times. So if there are no objections or discussion, I would move that we approve a motion to approve the bid and sale of the parcels north and west of 917 North Van Buren Street.
Second, Knopp.
Any additional discussion? Roll call.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, Callahan,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosato,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
and Knopf.
Aye.
Motion carried, 13-0.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 11, which is resolution 20-125-R. Waive formal bidding to award a contract to Midwest Public Safety LLC to implement a body-worn camera program for an amount not to exceed $149,187. Alderman Chanzit.
Thank you. So I wasn't at the previous meeting where you guys discussed this, but I did read the memos and watched, and so I appreciate all the discussion. I guess I would recognize the chief for doing a great job of putting this together and following the state process for the RFP. And this seems like a great price to get body cameras onto our police force. So if there is no additional discussion, I would move that we approve Resolution 20-125-R to waive formal bidding to award the contract to Midwest Public Safety LLC and to implement a body-worn camera program for not to exceed $149,187.
Second, Callahan.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Dan, I think that this is kind of combined here. This should be, the resolution should be to award a contract to Midwest Public Safety. The waiving of formal bidding will have to be a first step when we get to council. Because this would be the actual awarding of the contract in this resolution.
Yep.
Hi, this is Sean Mazza. I'm filling in for Chief tonight. I will pass the information along to him, so this should be an award of the contract, not the waiving of the bidding process. Okay.
No, but we do need to take two votes. We waive the formal bidding and then we take the motion. Or
Right,
take
and
the resolution.
that only has to occur at council. So
Right.
this motion should be to award the contract.
Right. I think that was my fault, and procedurally, I know that we need both of these where we're waiving the formal bidding, but Wolf is correct that the waiving gets done at the city council meeting itself, and that committee is merely recommending to city council that the contract be approved.
Correct.
Yep, absolutely. So this can't go on consent. Right. We'll do it in two parts. So is there any additional discussion though regarding the content? If not, clerk call the roll.
Okay, Tanzit?
Aye.
Barron? Aye. Wolf?
Aye.
O'Brien? Callahan?
Aye.
Meitzler?
Aye.
Malay?
Aye.
Ewer?
Aye.
Theron?
Aye.
McFadden?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Rosado?
Aye.
Beck?
Aye.
And Knopf?
Aye.
Motion carried, 13-0.
Okay, thank you. And that will go on the regular agenda.
Indeed, thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, up next is Resolution 20-122-R, approving a construction contract to Carlisle Utility Company for upgrading the 15 kV underground circuit along Pine Street for an amount not to exceed $134,759, which includes a 10% contingency amount. Alderman O'Brien is not here. Rahat, do you want to just take this and explain to us?
Sorry, yeah, I can take it.
Okay, thank you.
As I wrote in the memo, due to some of the recent outages that we had, Electric Division is looking at what improvements we can do throughout the city, which is not too expensive, but will be pretty good improvements to our system, so that in case of any activities, weather-related activities such as tree falling down or snowstorm or high wind situation where people lose power, but we can get the power back to them pretty quickly, because 50% of our electric services are overhead. So it's conceivable that we'll lose power once in a while due to the weather-related activities, but how soon we can get it back is the key. So we looked at this portion of Pine Street. There are two feeders that are coming out of the Cherry Park substation. There is a third feeder that was going to be built, but over the last 10 years, we never built it. So we looked at it and we said, how about we build this portion from along the Pine which will connect those two feeders at this point. So that means if one feeder, something happens to it, we can get the power through the other feeder to this feeder where there is a problem. And also this will connect to the new substation, the new Northeast distribution substation that is, we just built. So this is a win-win situation for $125,000 or so, where the southeast portion of our city will, in case they lose power, will be able to get the power back to them very quickly. So it's a relatively small amount to pay, and it's part of a bigger plan, which is the third feeder, which we never built. So this will ultimately be connected to the third feeder, giving us more flexibility in future. As I said in the memo, that we'll also be looking at our southwest portion of the city, where we had a few recent outages too, and making those improvements in 2021 and in 2022. This project was not budgeted in this year's program. However, as you all know, that some of the projects didn't go forward this year due to COVID and delay in getting projects out. So we have money available in the budget to do this project. So even though it was not budgeted, we request that the council approves this project moving forward. We invited quotes from some contractors that worked in the city before. You can see it that there are 5 bidders that provided quote to us, ranging from $122,000 to $284,000. So obviously there are some contractors that we are seeing from recent bidding. The bids are the quotes are pretty widespread, so we can tell that there are some hungry contractors out there who are looking for a job. So this is a good time also to move forward with projects like this one. So for us, $122,000 looks pretty lucrative, given that the highest bidder was at $284,000, which is almost 2.5 times of the lowest bidder. So we request that the Committee of the Whole approves this project and recommends to the City Council for approval. Any question? I cannot hear anybody.
Alan, are you muted?
There we go. I'm unmuted now. I'll make the motion that we recommend to Council Resolution 20-122-R, approving a construction contract to Carlisle Utility Company for upgrading the 15 kV circuit along Pine Street for an amount not to exceed $134,759, which includes a 10% contingency.
Second, Miller.
Okay, motion by Wolf, second by Miller. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
O'Brien, Callahan,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Thank you. Miller,
Aye.
Pizzato,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Chanzit, and Barron.
Aye.
I have 12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
All right. Thank you. Up next is the discussion on the 2021 budget. And I think we'll turn this over to Peggy. Is she going to have a program?
Yes, I have a presentation.
Okay. I got my popcorn ready.
Howard is
Can you
just
throw it through the screen? All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is the 2021 draft budget. It is 130.5 million. By the way, this presentation is has been posted to the website, so you can go back and look at it later. For anyone that watches this later, all of the budget is on our website. All of the presentations that we make will be posted there, as well as any questions and answers that come up through this discussion. And so the bulk of our budget is for operations of 83 million. We have capital spending of 39 million, debt payments of 6 million, and interfund transfers of 2.7 million. And then over here on the right side is the breakdown by fund. This chart is a summary of revenues, expenditures, the current year surplus and deficit. And then we have the capital or other category here. If that number, for instance, in the general fund is 426,000, but our deficit is 1.8 million, so we do not have a balanced operating budget. But all of the utility funds do, because that capital line is higher than the deficit. So we are spending down in those areas for capital improvements. And then we have our reserves that we're estimating we'll have at the end of 2021 in the day's operation. The general fund, the target is between 60 and 90 days, and all of the utilities, the target is 90 days. They will tend to accumulate higher balances. For instance, the sewer fund has been borrowing for some of their capital projects, but we'll need to start paying those back, so they need to have a higher balance. And then the general fund budget. The general fund is the main operating fund of the city, and we have expenditures of 29.9 million. And this just shows where the revenues are going to by department. Police is our largest expense at 10.7 million, followed by fire and very closely by public works. We have something that's a negative expenditure under Department 1075. And what that is a transfer from electric, water, and wastewater for their share of general fund costs. Utility billing, they pay the bulk of that, and administration, finance, and HR, because those departments are not in the utilities. And then this just shows the breakdown for the general fund by category, with wages being our largest cost, followed by benefits. Benefits include pension contributions for police, fire, and IMRF, health insurance, workers' compensation, FICA, and Medicare. And then we have capital transfers of 1.6 million, debt transfers of 1.1. And governmental accounting requires us to have capital costs and debt in another fund, except for short-term capital like a car or technology equipment. But ongoing programs need to be accounted for in a different fund, and that's why the money is being transferred out. So just a very small portion of our budget is for professional services and supplies. Only 5.3 million of the total budget are for items that are not wages, benefits, or capital or debt. Some of the highlights from the changes for this year's budget. 763 or 66,000 is an increase in wages over projected spending for 2020. That includes 80,000 for hiring the economic development manager that was put on hold for this year. We had a very large increase for the police and fire pension of 450,000. That's based on actuarial studies and we have always funded that at 100%, and I still recommend that we do that. And then other benefit cost increases related to higher wages or changes to insurance account for 160,000. A small increase for the TRICOM contract. Something that we'll discuss later is an increase to the street transfer for street capital. That was increased 250,000 this year for a total of 600,000. And then the dam study for 75,000. And then some other capital items for vehicle, the entrance signs. We didn't purchase those this year. So that was rolled over, and the same with the columbarium. That was rolled over to 2021. This is a big chart, but I wanted to show you the projected funding for the general fund out to 2027. 2027 is a 27th payroll. It occurs about every 11 years because of the way the calendar rolls when we pay every 2 weeks. And so I wanted to include that there so that you can see that we'll want to start setting aside some funds so that we don't dip below the 60 days in operations. And these are all projections and they'll be fine-tuned every year. But what I did is I just included the trend of about 2% increasing revenues and 4% increasing expenditures. And I split out the transfers for capital and debt. You can see in 2026, the debt for the fire stations rolls off and the transfers for capital increased significantly up to 2027 based on what Gary is going to talk about tonight as well, and that is funding for the street program. And that will bring up the transfer for just streets to $2 million by 2027. And that will be supplementing the gas tax and motor fuel tax. And so there's two different days operation here. And I wanted to show them both because these transfers that we make for capital and debt, we make them every year. It's not just occasional capital that we're funding. And so we should make sure that our revenues cover those transfers because they're more like an operating expense, even though they're being transferred for capital. But at the same time, the idea of the number of days of reserves is that you would be able to continue operations for that many days if all your revenue sources were stopped, or the majority of them were stopped. For instance, a tornado or something devastating where we had no income coming in, but we had to pay the bills. And we, of course, in that instance, would not make those transfers for capital. We would still have to make them for debt because of the legal requirement. But we would suspend the transfers for capital. And that's why I wanted to show you what that difference was. Because if it were a true emergency, we would not make those capital transfers. And then this also shows a projection of possibly implementing a home rule sales tax in 2023 and some other form of revenue, property tax or some other form of revenue out in 25, 26, and 27 in order to maintain the day's operation. And again, as I said, this may very well change. We will certainly update it every year. But I wanted to show you if you implemented a small revenue increase earlier, what the difference was. So here we have 64 and 58 days at the end of 2027. and that would go up to 82 and 75 days if you did small incremental property tax increases rather than larger ones. That's just something to consider. We don't have any property tax increases in for 2021, but something to be thinking about as we go into next year's budget. What you would rather see, if you'd rather see smaller increases to revenue or just hold off until we absolutely have to have it. Oh, I did want to add on that 250,000 increase to, if it were property taxes, it would be about $20 a year for a $300,000 home. So street projects this year, we have, as Laura told you recently, we just found out that Rahat applied for, and we were awarded STP funds for the stretch of Main Street from Van Nortwick to Randall Road. So there's some preliminary engineering in there for that. Rahat had originally budgeted, I think, $450,000 for that, but we lowered it just because our cash projections for the end of the year were going to be tight. And we aren't sure that they would get to it all next year, but they want to get going on it so that we can meet the timeline for spending the STP funds. Then the Prairie and Wilson intersection design work will be this coming year at $360,000. And then our annual resurfacing program and crack fill are budgeted in our motor fuel tax fund. And then several maintenance projects, parking lot maintenance and sidewalks, which includes new sidewalks, and the sidewalk that City Council asked to be put in there, $50,000 for the Prairie Street connections there. And then the road diet study is also in there. And then the current plan, and something that we're looking for the City Council to give direction on, is if you would approve increasing the funding out of the general fund until we reach that $2 million transfer per year to fund our streets. We're currently at $600,000 with this budget. And to give a little background, we had been making transfers from the general fund, and then we were awarded the Suncast grant, and there were some changes to the way we did the accounting, and so the transfers themselves were suspended because we were spending $7.5 million of general fund money on those projects so that that grant could be funded. That grant will end this year. And so now we need to start looking to other funding for our street projects. And I also have this out to 2027 for street capital projections. This includes motor fuel tax revenues, the gas tax and transfer from the general fund. We have some grants in there for this year. Future years are just reported net of grants. And then Rebuild Illinois funds, those are monies that we started getting this year. We got $572,000. We're going to get it over 3 years, $572,000 each year to be spent on a capital project. And so those are down here in projected spending for a capital project has to be spent by, the 1.7 million has to be spent by 2025. And then this shows, based on what current projects are in the loop, how much we would be spending each year on streets. This 1 million I plugged in to 2025 because that was for the, to complete the Rebuild Illinois funds. But it's all subject to change, but the goal is to get to about 2.6 million in resurfacing, and then to have money for other road projects and the sidewalks and all of those things that you have deemed as important for completing for walkability and those things that we talked about last night during strategic planning. Drainage projects. There are several drainage projects budgeted for next year. Fermilab design, Mahoney Creek watershed planning, Carriage Crest recharge basin at $414,000. Ward 1 will complete the last phase next year. And then some storm sewer lining on Prairie Street and the West Side Cemetery, and stewardship of the detention basins in Brayburn Marsh. That is an annual cost of about $80,000 for all of that stewardship. And then just to refresh everyone's memory, and for anyone from the public who may be listening, the City Council did approve increasing property taxes, $300,000 one year and then $300,000 the next year, for a total of $600,000 for funding these stormwater projects. That was done in lieu of a stormwater utility. And so those monies are dedicated to paying for Ward 1 debt and Area 3 debt and any other maintenance projects that we have to do. After the debt payments, the balance of funding each year that's available for new projects is $350,000. So as you can see, there are many projects on here that total more than $350,000 in 1 year. Just Carriage Crest recharge basin, just the engineering alone is $414,000 before we get to construction. So that is taking up all the money, and we're in the negative. So we need to find some kind of funding source for that. Particularly if the lift station doesn't work for Carriage Crest, it could cost as much as $3.5 million just for that project. So I also did projections for this out to 2027 based on where we are now. This $775,000 includes the transfer for the City Hall windows that we were doing, just so I could show you how the money was flowing, because the total debt payment is $411,000. And we were transferring $100,000 for stormwater before the $600,000. So the total dedicated to stormwater is $700,000. But as you can see, we'll need to issue debt. An interfund loan likely for 2021 if we do end up spending everything in 2021 until we get to 2022, and then we would have to issue bonds of at least $2.25 million in order to complete the Fermilab project and the Carriage Crest project. So that is something that I would like to ask the council to discuss tonight on whether or not you would like to issue debt for those, and if you would like to set aside funding for those, or if you would rather do it on a pay-as-we-go basis. Obviously, doing it on a pay-as-we-go basis, you would not be able to accomplish a lot with that money, because we did all of Area 3 and Ward 1 with the bond issue from 2017. So building capital projects, the City Hall renovations are in the budget this year. The renovations include the abatement of the lead paint at City Hall, office relocations, and work on the entrances to the building, and safety measures and security that not only for safety for someone coming in with ill intent, but for health safety as well, now that we are addressing the COVID issues. And then there's also the high-speed cable of the building that needs to be replaced. We waited, not knowing what was going to happen with the renovations, so it would be ideal to do that all at once if we could. And then some other smaller projects, and also a new building a new roof at the Public Works building. This 500,000 is offset by the electric and water utility. They share in the cost for the building, the Public Works building. So that's the whole cost, and the cost to the building fund will be 1/3 of that. So there is enough money on hand to do these projects this year. Next year, it could be short 275,000 to complete the renovations. And this would be updated once Scott Haynes actually put these things out to bid, and that would be brought back for discussion, I'm sure, on what the city council wanted to complete and if they wanted to put off some things and not others. Then the electric utility, there is no rate increase planned for 2021. We haven't had a rate increase in the electric utility since 2015. The capital projects that are planned to be funded with cash are 9.1 million. It's a very aggressive capital plan. It is possible that they may not all get done next year, but you can see the total capital projects that are planned out through 2025. All of the projects for the out years are in the appendix of the budget. If you would like to see what those are, by approving the budget, you are not approving those future year capital projects, only the ones that are in the current year budget. The other items are just there for you to see what's coming and have discussions about it if need be. The water utility has been very, very busy. They replaced all the water main in Ward 1 and Area 3 because it made sense to do it while the road was being tore up. So this past year, this year, we had to issue bonds. We issued $4 million in general obligation bonds to fund the water main replacements. There's a 3% rate increase in the budget. It is the only increase to residents and businesses included in this budget. And that is because there is so much going on in the water utility. We need to keep the revenue increases in there or delay some of these projects. And that can certainly be a discussion that you have as well. The lead service replacement is in the budget, but that will only go forward if we are approved for the forgivable loans. So I separated that revenue out in the cash flow so you could see what represents new debt and what is, because the forgivable loan is really just a grant. And then wastewater utility, they've had a lot of capital spending in the last few years at the wastewater treatment plant with $30 million for new EPA loan there. And then also some sanitary sewer work related to the stormwater work they shared in that cost. And then this next year, the lining of the sewer on Main Street will be done. And there's also some other small sewer lining projects that are planned. And the start of phase 2 design for the wastewater treatment plant. That's slated to start tentatively in 2023 with spending. You can see where in the cash flow here, the IEPA loans are set up to match the projected spending. And that is all I have for the presentation. So I'd like to turn it over to the city council and Laura to talk about and ask questions on what we have here. I don't know how to, nobody told me how to turn it back over to you.
Well, that's okay. We've got it, Peggy.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
I just wanted to commend Peggy and her whole department on everything that they have had to deal with all at once this year, between additional audits, what they had to do to put together the CARES Act funding applications for the fact that this was going to be an extremely complex budget as it was. So it just hats off to Peggy for all of the work that went into putting together this budget in the face of all of those other things. Thank you.
I will echo that sentiment that I think they have been burdened beyond any normal means at all this year with one thing after another. So thank you for all that that department does, Peggy.
Thank you. Now, I know in the past you would go around and do questions. Would you like to do that, Alderman Wolf, or?
We can. Have you had any questions up to this point that have been put together to go onto the website so the public can see them too? I just want to make sure that whatever questions we have and the answers all get, together and on the website, so that way we don't have to repeat or ask to have answers for things that have already been asked or brought up for the public.
Yes, we haven't had any questions yet.
Okay. Okay, we've done this in the past where we've just basically gone around the table, and since we don't really have a table, I guess we can start off however we want to do it.
Alderman Wolf, I don't know, do you want to do, I think Gary Holm also has a presentation. So, the two presentations really kind of hand in hand in terms of talking about what the challenge is in putting together future year budgets. So up to you whether you want to do questions just following Peggy's presentation, or if you'd like to additionally hear Gary's first and then go to questions, whichever would be more beneficial for you.
I think we probably should do what Peggy just went through. If anybody has any questions on the overview that she just gave on the budget, before we go into Gary's, and then I think we'll have more questions after that. So
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Nick.
Peggy, I haven't gotten through the whole budget, so I'm sure all of these answers are in there, but right off the bat, going back just briefly, you had talked about the renovation of the office, and then Scott's going to be getting bids. When do you know when that would be planned, or maybe
No, nothing has been planned as far as what I meant is nothing would move forward without the city council being aware of it. I should have been more clear on that. No,
Right.
no work has been done as far as
No, I
getting
know
bids.
no work. I just meant from he was getting bids, which would be a little more accurate tell moving
No,
forward.
I think because this project has been in our budget for the last 3 cycles, we really want to make sure that there's a commitment to move forward before putting those, doing the work to put the bid packet together. And we also, with the passage of time, in the intervening period of time, Henry Pratt has happened. We have had some incidents here ourselves regarding safety, and there's been the global pandemic. So we will also probably have to take a look at the existing plans, and those may need some alteration in light of those events as well.
Okay. How much did we get from the CARES Act in total?
1.55 million.
Okay.
That is included in the projected revenue under reimbursements. We have not received the funding yet. We're waiting to sign the intergovernmental agreement that you authorized the mayor and Laura to sign. Until we get instructions from them, we have to wait for them to tell us it's okay to send it back.
So we haven't received anything on that? No money?
No, we have not. We have to return our intergovernmental agreement, and then it's also my understanding that they are close to determining what format our backup documentation that we need to submit is, but they have not finalized that yet. Correct, Peggy?
That's correct. I haven't heard anything. But once we send the intergovernmental agreement back, I don't know if they're going to wait to get everyone's like they did this, before they sent them out, they waited until they had reviewed everyone's. That would really delay us if we had to wait for everyone else's agreement to get back there. I think we were probably the first ones to pass it because we got it on Friday and it was to you the next week.
Well, my question is, because you say in the budget that the 2020 deficit would be over 2 million without it. Will the CARES Act be applied to 2020 or is that revenue? Okay.
2020.
It doesn't matter when we got it. We already
Doesn't matter when we get it. We could get it 3 years from now. It's still 2020 accounting wise.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I wanted to clear. And then can you clarify, in the budget, we're up 175 grand on use tax. What's all included on the use tax?
That is due to online sales tax that is being collected now.
So wait, that's the online? Because I thought we weren't going to see online sales tax until mid 2021.
No, I don't know if you recall the South Dakota case that changed it for sales tax to be collected through Amazon sales. And we are getting some, it had to be a retailer that had an online presence or sold more than, I think, 175,000 in the state. So we did start seeing increases for that. Now in July of 2021, it's going to change to them collecting home rule sales tax as well as regular sales tax.
Okay, so that's
and it's my understanding that that's going to shift then to not be under the use tax category, but I can't say for sure. The state has not given us direction what line item it will be in.
Okay, that's all that came up so far. More to come.
Good question.
Okay, who's next?
Oh, I'll go.
Okay, Mark.
Peggy, it looked like the MFT funds were stagnant. Are we not getting more from the increase that the state did on motor fuel tax?
We are getting more. We were also getting some other supplemental payments, so it may not look, but the other payments that they were giving us dropped off, and now we're getting the extra motor fuel tax.
Okay. So it's not enough that's going to help cover us for what our plan was as we increase what we wanted to do for street maintenance?
No, we were getting about 679 in regular motor fuel tax, and now it's projected to be, I think, 960 or 980.
Okay.
They are sharing it with us, which is nice, but they're not sharing it fully with us. There's a lot they take off the top before they start dividing up the pie.
Okay. Along those same lines, there was, and I don't know if it was in Gary's document or if it was in the introduction, I lost track of where it was. There was talk about a roadway study for, how much we spend on resurfacing roadways and repairs every year. And the last study we did was several years ago, and now we're looking to do another one in 2021. Where is that in the budget? And how much of that cost?
Is in, Rahat budgeted 20,000 for that.
It's 20, okay.
And it's in Fund 43.
Okay, so it's not significant. I was wondering how significant that cost was.
No.
But it would be, if we start nickel and diming things, it seems like if we were going to spend money, we already have a study, and why spend more money when we don't need to right now? Under the water department, you talk about that 3% increase, and I'm trying to understand when I look at the reserves, it looks like the reserves are continuing to go up. What does it look like if we don't do a water rate increase?
It will drop off and we will not be able to do the capital improvements in later years. I can send you some different scenarios.
Okay.
Those projections that I have there, I've done various situations to just see, you know, what could we do, what could we hold off on. The wastewater fund had recommendations from the rate study to have a 4% increase every year. But based on the timing of the projects, I believe we can hold off on that because I believe that the city council is very aware of the situation that our businesses and residents are in. And so we are not recommending that you have that.
Okay. The benefits, it looked like you said the benefit costs went up and some of that might have been an increase in wages, but did we not realize a reduction in benefits with the new benefit offerings we had this year?
The bulk of that increase is the $450,000 for the pension funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're actually being very good in terms of the annual increase in the medical benefit expenses are far below what is average if we were to go it alone in the market.
Okay.
Right. And we still don't know if more people will shift to HMO now that we started offering that last year. So we hope to continue to see cost savings for the health insurance. I think the projected rates were between 3% and 4% overall, which is still low for the health industry.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
Okay, who's next? I know this is always a lot to go through.
It is, and you don't have to ask all of the questions tonight. We have, several meetings that we can go over this. And I did just get this out to you on a Friday evening, so I realize that you may not have had a chance to go through everything. I think the one thing I would like you to look at and gauge your level of comfort is utilizing reserves to balance the budget. Are you comfortable with that? Because it is a large gap, but we did also pass a large gap last year trying to spend down those reserves. So,
Yeah, I know we talked about that at quite at length last year. That several of us wanted a small increase in our taxes. Nobody could foresee what this year has been like. But we would still be using reserves this year. We just wouldn't be using as much. I don't think there's any way any of us want to consider any kind of raise other than keeping the rate the same and letting the valuation bring up the total dollars in the taxes. But I think we do need to start thinking about, that reserve total doesn't last forever. And if you look at what you extrapolated out to 2027, you can see how it shrinks and how we do have to come up with other revenue sources over that period. And, what are our options on that? And that's where we really have to make some big decisions, I think, in the next couple of years. And if we're okay with spending this much out of reserves this year.
Alan, I have a question. So Peggy, I know that there was the recommendation to do a water rate increase for 5 years, starting next year, and then sewer starting in 2022. What about the electric rates? I know that there is some talk, is there some possibility, because we haven't had a rate increase in 2015, is this something that we also need to think about? Because I feel like if we keep pushing some of these rate increases down, we're going to end up hitting everybody with every bucket of a rate increase at once.
Well, water and sewer, based on the last rate study that we had pretty much ongoing rate increases for many years, based on the age of the water mains and the sewer mains that are in the ground. Not large increases. I don't know if you recall from the presentation, but it's $1.18 for the water increase. So it's not per month, it is per month. So, you know, but it's not a huge increase all at once for the water and sewer. Some communities have passed 20% rate increases in 1 year for water and sewer. So we're trying to not have it be as impactful. But regarding the electric utility, in the cash projection that is in the budget and also in the presentation, I have a notation on there that there might need to be an increase in 2023 for the electric utility. It depends on the spend down for capital, how quickly those projects get done that are budgeted. And it also depends greatly on our power costs. We've had, I don't even like to say it, but we've had good years as far as what those are. And we expect them to decrease some next year as well. We have what's called ECA with NIMPA, and we have overpaid. So they are rebating that. They've been rebating that back to us the last few years. And we expect to see that lower cost next year as well. But that could always increase for unknowns that we have no control over. So that could change in a future year. Revenues could change if we lose a large power customer. Our commercial and industrial customers account for a large portion of our electric revenues. And those are also weather dependent as well. Depends on how hot it is, and it can make a very big difference in the consumption. This year, electric consumption was really down in the commercial and industrial sector because of the shutdown. So hopefully that will be different next year, and we'll see those pick back up. So there is a possible increase coming for electric in 2023. Gary is hopeful that we could go 10 years to 2025. So that would be good if we could do that.
Yeah, I've always felt like smaller increases spread out over more time are easier for the public to handle than, you know, putting it off for, you know, several years and then having to have a larger increase. I think it's also easier to make an adjustment back off of that if, you know, we go up very slowly and then realize we don't have to have the rest of the rate increases that were planned. It's easier just to leave it alone. If we were planning on not, you know, updating or raising the rates for several years at a time, then to back off of it wouldn't be as easy. Or at least I don't think it would be as easy.
Right. Doing those multi-year cash projections based on the current year really helps us to plan. But like I said, part of that definitely has to do with weather. Our water revenues were much higher this year because I guess it was dry. I was inside, I didn't notice.
Anybody else have any more questions for tonight? If not, we can move into Gary's talking points on the 2021 budget and infrastructure funding policies moving forward.
Thank
Gary?
you. Yep, I'm here. If you all have my talking points, I can just go through them. As Laura already indicated and as Peggy indicated, there's quite a bit of overlap between our presentations. So I'll just kind of touch on many of these points at a high level. And if there's further questions, we can get into them in more detail. Starting with the fund, I think we need to hit on this for the fourth time tonight. As Peggy indicated, we are using reserves this year to balance. As she showed you, it won't take long, won't take very many years, certainly by 2027. We're not sustainable at the current levels that we have. We foresee the need for additional revenues. She identified the home rule sales tax, also indicated potentially a property tax. And again, it'll be up to City Council whether you want to wait on that as long as possible or do more of an incremental approach. A couple of other things in my talking points that maybe, again, not for tonight, but we need to maybe circle back on these. There's two ways to reduce expenditures in a municipality. One is to look at reducing services and just cut back on services we provide. And the other one is our largest expenditure, and that's personnel. And again, through attrition, the city over the years can cut personnel costs. Although I will come off and say we are a very lean organization. Many of you municipal, you can spend your careers in municipalities. I've been in both the private side and the municipal side, and by far Batavia is the leanest organization I've ever worked for. We just don't have a lot of people, and we never have. It's always been a lean organization. So frankly, my sense is there's not a whole lot of people to be able to cut. If you want to keep providing the same level of services, those two kind of go hand in hand. All right. I'm going to jump down to the roadways. We did do a study in 2011. Back then, the technology was such that they would physically drive a van with sensors around every single road. Things with the smartphones and with satellite imagery, they have a whole different way of evaluating roadway pavements. Roadways are kind of living, breathing beasts. Roadways do not just deteriorate in a linear fashion. So we have a 10-year-old model, and you can't just draw a straight line to say what things are in 2021. Civil engineers will tell you that you really don't want to go much longer than 10 years. You need an updated model every decade to be able to reevaluate your prioritization lists, and that also enables you to reevaluate what you need to be spending annually. Based on the 2011 report, so the last one we did, that's where Peggy cited that value of 2.6 million. And again, here comes the level of service. It's for an average condition. Council may elect to have roads in a less than average condition. There's many communities that do. In order to do less than average, you would spend less than average annually. It could go the other way too, although staff wouldn't recommend spending money to get above average just to be able to be, a bragging point. So we are recommending that updated study. We will need additional funding in order to support capital reconstructions and things beyond just the roadway resurfacing. That funding hasn't yet really been identified. I think Peggy kind of laid that out for you. Just like we can with other programs, slow things down. And again, we talked about earlier, maybe we pass on some of the funding opportunities that we have or grant opportunities that we have in order to push things out to later years. That's certainly an option. Or the other option, again, is we got to seek out revenue. Someone mentioned gasoline, Alderman Ewer mentioned gasoline tax earlier. We got to keep a close eye on the gasoline tax because a whole host of people are working from home now and not driving as much. And gasoline taxes, the consumption is just, again, I'm not an expert, but I would guess it's down because you have a whole lot of people putting a lot fewer miles on their cars. In Peggy's budget presentation, she mentioned the Prairie Street sidewalk. This is a tiny dollar value in the big picture. It's only $50,000. That was put into the budget at the request of Alderman. That
that particular sidewalk was put in because we've eliminated parking on Prairie Street, and now folks have to park on the side streets, and the thought was to get sidewalks in order to have them have access to the side streets. I will say that that's not typically the criteria that the city has used for sidewalks. Typically, I think we touched on it briefly last night. Typically, we've started with the schools and started with the parks and started with gaps and started with roadways with sidewalk on only one side. And these roadways don't have sidewalk on one side, but those are the criteria we typically have used. So that might be something we'll circle back to in the budget as well. Again, 50,000, but not following the typical criteria that the city has followed in the past. That's a lot for general fund roadways. I'm going to just pause right there if anyone has any question on those.
Anybody have any questions?
Hearing none, I guess I'll jump into stormwater. Peggy already covered this again. There's basically 700,000 that is now supporting stormwater, which is about 600,000 more than there was when I first started with the city. So it's made great strides in the last 12 years. A lot of discussions related to a stormwater utility back in 2012 through 2015. And at that time, council said they don't want a utility, that they want to administer the program through property taxes and through the general fund. So how we came to have this value that we have today. About half of that is going towards bonds already, and about half of that is remaining for other projects. And as Peggy's already told you, unless we do a pay-as-you-go approach, and I've said this in my memos when I brought these projects to City Council, there's no funding sources identified. The largest ticket items that are on the near-term horizon are the Carriage Crest project and the those the council will need to find funding sources for if they want to move forward. But there's also things like the North Dam project. We talked about that briefly earlier this evening. There's no funding source yet. We have our fingers crossed, and we're hopeful that the state will provide funding related to dam removal. Based on what the state has told us, that's a pretty good prospect. But the state has also been very clear to indicate that they're not willing to fund preservation of Depot Pond. So that becomes a city, if that becomes a city priority, that also becomes a question of how it's going to be paid for. As Laura pointed out, it's not our property, it's Park District property. So that'll be a long discussion in and of itself. And then finally, there's Mahoney Creek Stabilization projects, which came out of this year's Mahoney Creek study. That was a presentation that was given to you a couple of months ago, and really kind of a presentation that was an outcropping of many public meetings. And if all that presentation identified about a half dozen projects, and those projects were upwards of about $8 million, again, with no defined funding sources. So we do not have sufficient funds to support future drainage projects. We can increase, again, you can do it through property taxes. One thing I didn't mention tonight is special service areas. That's definitely an option. Way back in consulting days, I worked for a private consultant who did work for the village of Riverside. Riverside is kind of a near west Chicago suburb, a historic suburb, and their primary funding mechanism back then, things may have changed now, but back then, I think I was working on special service area number 53 because they use special service areas all the time. If they resurface a street, they basically assessed the people who live on that street. It's just a different philosophy and a different way of doing it. So that's drainage. One last couple other things, thoughts. We've mentioned bonding tonight a couple times. I know there's a desire to not have as much debt, and I understand that. That's a community value. I get that. The flip side of that is right now, those of you on the financial side all know that interest rates are near historic lows. So if it's time for a municipality to borrow to do capital, now might be it. We still have to support those bonds. You have to be able to pay them back. we need a revenue source in order to support the bonds. But bonding would get you the cash flow to be able to afford projects in the more near term. And with that, I will ask for questions again, and then very briefly, I'll just touch on a couple of utility questions that came up tonight.
Okay, Gary, and probably Gary and Peggy, if there's a way we could, with all this, are talking about bonding out to do some of these projects or how we would, fund some of this, is there a way that we can come up with kind of a generic cost per, like, what per $1 million that we would want to bond out for to do, say, Carriage Crest or Mahoney Creek or something like that, one of the big projects, about what that would mean in a revenue generation per year if we bond out for, $1 million or $5 million or $10 million at a time. What does that do? Say we wanted to fund it with sales tax or property tax. How could we equate those two so we would get an idea of what kind of increases we'd be looking to go to the public with for paying for those over time on a bond issue? Did I have my mic on?
Yes, you did. I didn't have mine on. In the cash projections on my presentation tonight and also in the budget book, I show what new debt would cost for 2.25 million. And that's 158,000 over 20 years as an estimate. And then there is also in the budget, not in the presentation tonight, but in the budget, I also show what it would be if you had to, if Carriage Crest ended up costing $3.5 million and we had to borrow $5 million, because we also have the Fermi project in there.
Okay. Because I think that would give us on the council a better idea, of if we add $1 million or $5 million or $10 million over time to do some of these projects, what would that mean? Is it $300 a month to an average tax bill? Is it $100 a month? How those numbers would equate, so we'd get an idea of, I guess what we think is reasonable if we were to go that route.
Well, I did do some calculations today, and for $250,000 a year, it would be about $20 on a $300,000 home, if it were property taxes.
For what? For the $3.5 million?
For 250,000 increase.
Okay.
And for the $2 million in debt, 2.25 million, it's 158,000.
Okay. And that's kind of, I think, the numbers that I would like to have, kind of at hand, so we can say, okay, we're going to do, $1.5 million this year, and 2 years from now we're going to add 5 million to it, so we know what kind of numbers we'd be adding to people's tax bills if we so choose to go that route.
Sure. I think what the what I just wanted to make clear in the presentation is that the general fund is going to need money.
Right.
And the plan that I've laid out for the general fund does include getting the funding up for streets to the level that we need it. But that doesn't allow for a lot of reconstructions, because reconstructions are very expensive. If we're able to continue to get STP funds like we have, then maybe we can do more, and that would be good. Unfortunately, with stormwater, we aren't going to have those kinds of funds available. I think there was one project Andrea had told me that they might be able to apply for some grant funds for. But going forward, I guess, because there is 400,000 budgeted for Carriage Crest, you'll want to make that decision if you want to move forward with that project in particular for this budget, and then establishing a funding plan overall for the future years. for instance, you could, borrowing is very low right now. It probably makes the most sense rather than, if you want to do Fermi in a year or two, or, the only thing is it's issuing debt in the same year that so if One Washington moves forward, we wouldn't be able to get bank qualified bonds, which would increase the interest cost. So in that aspect, it would make sense to delay it if there's no urgent need for that project to move forward in the next year.
I think that also
year or two.
falls into our planning is, knowing that we can only go so far as what we can bond out for, each and every year. And then, we as a council have to make those decisions on how we're going to fund the projects that we've prioritized as we move forward.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, we can issue a higher level of general obligation debt. It's just you will pay a slightly higher interest rate if it goes over 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the water utility is going to need to issue debt in 2022 and 2024 based on the current projects that they have planned. And this year we issued general obligation bonds, but it's likely that in those years we'll move to revenue bonds so that we don't usurp all of our general obligation bonds with utility debt.
And just so everybody understands, the revenue bonds would be backed completely by the revenue generated by the utility, by the enterprise funds, rather than the general obligation of the city to support it with whatever means they have. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
I do. Can I ask just a general question about SSAs and how they've been used in the past? Have they been used to do drainage projects and neighborhood stuff like that in Batavia? And if so, do they cover 100% of a project? Are they supplemental? How does that work?
Peggy could probably remember the last SSA. There hasn't been one since I've been here. It's been years.
Yeah,
We
the
have
parking garage.
parking garage.
Yeah, parking garage is the last one that comes to my mind. And that was a
Well,
partial funding source.
We did have SSAs on Ellen and Roberts Lane, but they weren't, they were a nightmare.
To answer your question, Abby,
The county would not assess it directly, so we had to rebate. We had to cut everybody a check with the first installment and the second installment to pay them back for anything that went over the amount that they owed. It was not a good way to do it. And that was already in place when I came here, I think, in 2001. It was already, the decision was made on that. But that was the last SSA that was for water mains that we put down those two streets. We do have a small SSA tax for Prairie trails, but we only levy 6,000 in total, so it's really negligible, and that's for a detention area. So that is the only active SSA that we have. Oh, besides the downtown.
I'm sorry, my fault. Abby, just to kind of answer some of your questions, if you want to establish an SSA, you first have to establish the boundaries, and then you basically put it out essentially for a vote, and Scott Buning will be able to better explain this than I can, but you have to get the people within the boundary to agree to the SSA. You can't just impose an SSA on them, they have to agree to it.
At least they have to not object. That's
They
the
have to
issue.
not object, thank you. Yeah, that's a better, like I said, Scott Buning could do it better than me.
Yeah, 51% of the property owners and electors object to it, then it doesn't get formed.
to answer your question, it can be formed to pay for 10% of a project or 50% of a project or 100% of a project. That's however we want to set it up, and that would be a discussion, a policy discussion with the council and, you know, amongst the residents. And then as Peggy kind of alluded to, they can be formatted in different ways, but basically it could just appear on the people's property tax bill and they would pay it as part of their property taxes. So that's SSA's 101, but there's a whole lot more to them than that. I used SSA to redo industrial streets when I was up in Wooddale by O'Hare Airport. SSA and industrial parks are a good match with each other because generally the industrial people, if you tell them you're going to come in and rebuild their roads, they're happy about that because they use those roads for their semis and their deliveries, and they don't really object to the SSA. So we were very successful doing that type of work. I think there'd be much more opposition to tell a residential neighborhood, you know, you tax to pay for a project. That's just my thought.
Yeah, most recently, we've encountered some objections from the Nagel Industrial Park when we started trying to form that, if you recall. And the property owners objected to that, and so that became a problem, obviously, that we are still trying to work through with the property owners on that, but we haven't resolved that quite yet.
Is there a time limit for the SSA or is it indefinite?
Depends on how you form it. You can do it with a time frame, or you can just make it indefinite. You can make them dormant, you can make them active. You know, there's different varieties of how you can form them and what you can do with them.
I think the goal in this case would be to establish an SSA to pay for a specific project, not be an enduring revenue source for the next 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding, though, that the county will not ask, I don't know why I can't think of the word on what you call it, but they won't levy
ad valorem
that amount to everybody.
The ad valorem ones? The ad valorem SSAs, those we have to actually collect on behalf of the property ownership, I believe.
The ad valorem SSA is based on the EAV of the house.
Yeah, the one, I can't remember what it's called either. It's one.
Yeah, I know, it just escapes me right now.
Yeah,
but
it's like a special assessment, essentially.
Right, it's like a special assessment where they would charge each property owner the same. Because when we did Ellen and Roberts Lane, and when we did Wabansie and Maple, everybody paid the same based on what they were having done. Whereas if you levy a special service area tax, if you have a larger home that has a higher EAV, you're going to pay more for that same improvement. And that can have some unhappy property owners.
Mm-hmm. And I think it has to be project specific, you know, and with a time frame, I guess, to pay either bonds off or to pay for the project. You know, it's not like the tollway system where once you get the money, you just keep spending it every year.
Right. No, you have to prove how you spent it.
Mm-hmm.
Alan, the tolls are going to go away as soon as they pay for the road.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's something that I want to say. I think, you know, we've proved it out already a couple of times when we've raised gas tax or other things that we've done where we've earmarked those for specific things, whether it be street improvements or infrastructure. We don't just create a new tax and throw it into the general fund and just find a place to spend it. We have needs that when we do increase, whether it's property taxes or, you know, adding a special tax on gasoline or home rule sales tax or whatever we've done, we've tried to earmark those for exactly what we think their intended purpose should be. And that's something that, you know, I think when we lose the payments, the bond payments on the fire stations, that I think it's a half cent that we instituted for that we as a council, if we're going to keep that there, that we dedicate that to something else infrastructure wise or capital wise, that we don't just let that money roll over into the general fund. And I think that's really important for us to be able to justify when we want to raise a revenue stream, what we're going to use it for, and to justify that not only to ourselves, but to the public. I think that's really important, rather than just saying, hey, we got, X number of dollars that we can create from this new tax and we're going to spend it. And again, I don't want to be like the Illinois legislature.
That was something also that I didn't talk about at all as far as the budget discussion. We really don't know, and I'm sure the mayor will be talking about it in the coming months. We don't know what they're going to do next year for shared revenues or unfunded mandates. They're broke, so.
Beyond broke.
Yeah. So that is a concern, certainly, that they may reduce the funding that they give to municipalities. There's a lot of pressure, of course, from the city of Chicago, who is also broke, keep that money flowing. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was some legislation that said, well, if any city with more than 500,000 in residents gets to keep it, but everyone else only gets the lower amount.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be the first time that that's happened for Chicago.
We may have to spend a lot more time supporting legislative action in the next year or two than I think we ever have.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. We know that our local government distributed fund could very well be a target for the state in order to help themselves out of their financial crisis. And it's important that not only all of us, staff and city council, but educate our residents about what LGDF is and what an important part of our budget that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Peggy, I believe that's $2.7 million.
That's correct. For just the income tax portion.
Right.
And I think that's something very important that we need to reinforce with the public, both through our meetings when we have this budget in front of the council on TV, but also, in the future, we have to keep bringing that up and let the public know that we're going to need help from them as well if that comes up in front of the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly now more than ever, encourage all of your neighbors to shop local
Yes.
and keep the money within our community whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, does anybody else have any more questions on this tonight on the budget? Our discussion on infrastructure funding? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on then to item number 15, project status. Laura?
Sure, thank you. Right now, we're seeing leaves on the west side of town. That's a major focus for our streets department for the next several weeks. Our next leaf collection will be on the east side, November 2nd, and west side, November 9th. We do a third collection, weather permitting, and that would be on the east side on November 16th and on the west side, November 23rd. But remember that advanced disposal, you can put your leaves into the yard waste bags. It has to be leaves only, and they will collect those during the month of December without a sticker. And so if you still have leaves at that time and you want to have your leaves collected that way, that's an option. Right now, unfortunately, our utility billing department had to close because we had an employee who tested positive for COVID. And so we expect that the office will, at this point, remain closed until November 6th, but be checking our website and our social media. We will announce when that office is open again. We have made arrangements, the same arrangements that we made when the whole building was closed. If people have payments that they want to make or need to make in person, there is a drop box that is down in the lobby of the police entrance, and those payments are collected on a daily basis. However, just wanted to assure people, because of the disruption, we are not doing any shutoffs or assessing penalties at this time. There is also an external mailbox in the west side parking lot here at City Hall if you wanted to just kind of drive through and drop your payment off there. In community and economic development, we have received plans for a speculative industrial building on Pearson Drive this week, and these are going to be going to Plan Commission for design review in November. They will probably be asking for an earlier permit in order to start the grading on the site because they're very anxious to move forward with that project. The public hearing for establishing TIF number 6, which would include the One Washington Place redevelopment area, is scheduled for the City Council meeting on November 2nd at 7:30. We have received an application to designate the Kandy House as a historic landmark. This house was located at 210 North Washington Avenue and had been in the Kandy family for 6 generations. This landmark application will be before the Historic Preservation Commission on November 9th. And we've been reviewing initial proposals for parking lot improvements at both of the Suncast facilities, both on Suncast Lane and then also on Kirk Road. The Suncast Lane is a relatively small parking lot improvement, and Kirk Road site is much bigger expansion to the passenger and truck parking areas. So a further indication that they're increasing their production at those facilities. In Public Works, the asphalt binder course has been substantially completed in Area 3. And now the roadway surface course and landscaping remain as major work items. Of course, we had a little interruption due to the weather this week, but we will focus on the roadway surface course getting down, and thereafter the crews will be going and doing the restoration of landscaping. Our electric crews have mainly been focused on efforts at replacing infrastructure that was damaged in the storm a couple of weeks ago on Union Avenue, where we saw a huge tree fall. And also curbs and driveways have been installed at the west end of the Main Street project. The storm sewer has gone in along Route 31. And the project schedule, we're hoping to get as much of the project paved to binder course as possible prior to winter. Also wanted to share that the fire department won an award from the Fire Safety Alliance for our Fire Prevention Week posting on Facebook. And as a result of that, the Batavia Fire Department received 40 10-year smoke detectors and 15 carbon dioxide detectors to hand out to the community. So we're really proud of them for being able to accomplish that. And then also received a nice email message from one of our businesses in our industrial area from Cast Aluminum Solutions, has won an award from the Daily Herald Business Ledger. Their CEO received an award of distinguishment, and they sent a very nice email out not only to us but other organizations in the community like the Batavia Chamber of Commerce, and just noted what an excellent partnership all of us had, and that it has contributed to them feeling that it was part of their success here. So that was very nice news to hear. And I'll take any questions that anybody might have about other projects.
Laura?
Yes.
Do we know, are they going to get the sidewalks and curb and gutter in front of the first block there of Main Street to First Street on Batavia Avenue? Is that going to get done this year? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the goals, is to get all that buttoned up and get the businesses back.
Okay.
Get the businesses back in working order before the onset of winter.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to make sure that we if we have to slow down somewhere further west on that as long as we get driveways and everything for access back to the houses, I want to make sure the businesses have access to the street.
Yes.
And, they can hopefully get back to whatever normal is this winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, as is what happens sometimes in construction. The goal was to have the businesses farther along right now, but as it turns out, the west side is farther along right now. But yes, the businesses are still on track to get buttoned up, at least in a good manner, so they can conduct business throughout the winter months.
Okay.
Hey, Laura, is there anything
Yes,
that
Nick.
can be stated publicly of what's going into the Aliano's building?
Yes, well, it's going to be a lovely new restaurant over there. In fact, they have the name on the front of it even. They're going to call it the Windmill Grill. So here you have people who their other restaurant is down in Springfield. They're from elsewhere in the Chicagoland area, and they came to Batavia, and they are they love the community and they embrace the community. And so they are going to be the Windmill Grill. And I see them over there working on that space day and night. I'm going to guess if I looked outside my window right now at 9:00 p.m., that the lights are on and there are people over there working to get that restaurant and to open as soon as possible. So they are full speed ahead, and we look forward to them joining the other great restaurants that we have here in Batavia.
Awesome. No timelines that are available, or
Not
just
to my,
full steam ahead?
Scott Buning has any further details on that.
No, I don't have any other details on it. I mean, there wasn't much work they had to do regarding permits. I mean, there was a wall they had to take down, but most of the other stuff is cosmetic type work. So they haven't given us a specific time frame, but they like Laura said, they are working there day and night to get stuff done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any others? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Knapp, second by Cerrone. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. See everybody in November.
Okay.
Good night.
Everybody.